Hello there folks, time for part 2 in my series where I show my jazz CD collection and it will be 3 parts in this series, so there will be one more after this one. In this part it will be a little bit more modern jazz of bebop standards and so on than it was in the first part. So let's start to check out what these contains. Well, let's get started. I'm going to try to take this as fast as I can. This is a triple CD box set with Benny Goodman and Helen Forrest. It says the complete Helen Forrest with Benny Goodman, and that means that these 3 CDs contains all of their recordings, which I highly doubt. So I think that the title might be a little bit a selling trick, but still it's a great album with great deal of music. We're in a huge part of Benny Goodman CDs here, so we have more. Here you can see Swing into Spring, a live concert with these musicians from 1958. We have a V-disc recording parties which contains a whole lot of musicians. V-disc, a label that were released only during the Second World War, and they are here broadcasts released on CD. This is a compilation that I got from my friend Otto in Christmas present back in 1993, I think. Jazz Archive, Benny Goodman, a true collector's item. And we have Let's Dance broadcasts 1933 to 35, released on something called Sunbeam. I have a feeling that this is some kind of a bootleg release, but it is extremely interesting. Immortal Concerts, this is Giants of Jazz that have released the Massey Hall concert with Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker on their Immortal Concert series. But I bought this pretty early. I bought this, I think it was one of the first jazz CDs I bought, and therefore I still have it, even though it isn't complete. On the other hand, you'll see me show the album version, the double album set, the world's greatest concert, something like that. And there are tracks on there that isn't here, and there are tracks on this CD that aren't there. So I still have use for it, but it isn't a complete concert. We have a Benny Goodman again, live at the World Exhibitions, Brussels 1958, International World Exhibitions, unissued recordings. Benny Goodman, his orchestra and his combos, 1941 to 55, a Giants of Jazz compilation. This is a real classic. One of my first jazz recordings from the radio on cassette when I was really young, during my first jazz years, if not the first, was a live recording from when Benny Goodman was in Stockholm, and I really fell for it. And many years later, I think back in 1994 or 5, I found this concert it's entirely in CD. So I'm very, very happy for it. And it's Miles Davis albums now. We have an album called Ballads, which is what it says. CBS Master Series, Sketches of Spain on CD, the most modern Miles I have, Kind of Blue, of course. Here we have Oscar Peterson plays Count Basie, not with Count Basie, but he plays Count Basie. Oscar Peterson, a very modern Oscar Peterson. This is quite now is the label, and Time and Again is the album. And this is extremely modern. This is from 2000, when Oscar Peterson still were a little slower due to his stroke that he had. But it's still fun to have a very, very modern Oscar Peterson release. My favorite instrument, Oscar Peterson, exclusively for my friends, compilation. And we have Fats Navarro and Ted Dameron, a 2 CD set from Royal Roast with pure bebop with Fats Navarro and Ted Dameron at the Royal Roast. So there's the first, here's the second. Volume 1, Volume 2. Charlie Barnett and his orchestra dropped me off at Harlem, also an album that was one of the first CDs, jazz CDs I bought. I bought it in 1993. Art Tatum in one of these typical low-budget compilations, classic jazz releases, piano genius, but still very fun to have. Artie Shaw and his orchestra, Big Band Bash on Giants of Jazz compilation. We have Louis Armstrong. This is Louis Armstrong during when he had a big band during the early 30s, and therefore is really, really great. Maybe some of the best recordings I ever heard with Louis Armstrong, who isn't one of my favorites, but this one is great. I remember when I went to high school back in 1993, there was a sellout with these double CDs, CD sets. They had a sellout of these releases from That's Jazz with a whole lot of different kind of bebop, jazz classic. These are pure bebop. And they were very low price at the time. It was a sellout, as I said. So I think, though the price here says otherwise, I think I bought this for $1 only. And this also, because this is from the same label, same series, More Jazz Bebop 2 album CD set. Here we have a Coleman Hawkins, passing it around. Normal compilation. We have a Stan Getz, Pennies from Heaven, also on Jazz Time. Also a compilation. Frank Sinatra, Blue Eyes, Blue Skies. This is Frank Sinatra the way I prefer him, the early age, the early times when he had recordings with Tommy Dorsey and so on, when he was a pure jazz singer. And therefore, more of these. Frank Sinatra with Harry James and his orchestra, 1939. We have Tommy Dorsey Orchestra with Frank Sinatra, 1935 to 47. Jazz Portraits is the label. And here we have another Jazz Portrait, but with Lester Young. We have here a Thelonious Monk, which is Monk with in its earlier days with bebop, when he plays purely bebop. A really, really great album, maybe one of the best Monk album I have, containing Suburban Eyes, that I remember as one of the earlier jazz tunes that I heard when I was young. Jerry Mulligan Sextet on Giants of Jazz. Charlie Parker at Jazz at the Philharmonic, Immortal Concerts. I have praised these Immortal Concerts, but I realize that aren't complete concerts. I don't know until I find the vinyl version of it, if there exists as such, whether this is complete or not. But until then, this is a very, very nice thing to have, and interesting to have, that they release in live concerts. Horace Silver, Safari, also on Giants of Jazz, a compilation. Sonny Rollins, Air Rain. a really nice and soft and relaxing Sonny Rollins album. More Sonny Rollins on Giants on Jazz, Tenor Madness. We have Sonny Rollins Forever. This is very relaxing and nice. Sonny Rollins and only a trio. Released on Amigo, who is owned by Bonnier, Swedish multimedia family. Tore Erling Orchestra, Tore Erling Orchestra, Swedish Jazz, Flash. This is partly live and partly studio. This is another Tore Erling and Månskenspromenad. Overall, of course, in English, but some in Swedish also, like the title track. We have a live concert with Swedish vibraphone player Lars Estrand with quartet. The first set, this is a really nice concert, especially since it also contains Kjell Öhman at organ. And you know what I feel about organ? I love it. So this is the second set. We have here also Clifford Brown Memorial, an album that I bought from a record store that shut down in 2000 and that had a sellout. Plays also a lot of songs here with American musicians. That's why here track number 1 to 4 is recorded in Stockholm. And more Clifford Brown Memorial album, released on Blue Note. We have a Monica Zetterlund, my favorite Swedish jazz singer. Det finns dagar, there are days. And we have here the Dorsey Brothers in a very late concert, live at the Meadowbrooks 1955. When the brothers had patched up, done their Dorsey Brothers movie and so on. And just before, I think it was one of the last, this was one of the last recordings with Tommy Dorsey before he passed away. Sophisticated Swing. This is these radio men, Knut Borge from Norway and Leif Smokerings Andersson, who had a radio show in Norway, in Norwegian radio. And they picked together a double album set with their favorite jazz songs, and also introduces it in the beginning. Musik genom 4 sekler, Music Through 4 Centuries, med Jan Johansson, Swedish piano player Jan Johansson, in a double album set, a box set. He plays a whole lot of Swedish folk music in jazz versions. This is a Swedish group called The Real Thing, live. I went to the jazz club here in my city Sundsvall and listened to these guys and bought this one. This is Woody Hermann, Keeper of the Flame. We have a Woody Hermann and his orchestra, first and second Wild Root radio show. So this is live though, and this is from the same label as the Benny Goodman I showed there, but here it is Woody Hermann when he was in Stockholm back in 1954 in a 2 album set, 2 CD set. Woody Hermann Memorial 40th Anniversary Carnegie Hall Concert, released on Bluebird, RCA's sub-label for jazz. Quincy Jones, Quincy's Home Again. I have shown multiple times the vinyl version called Quincy's Home Again. Stan Getz and Oscar Peterson Trio. I have this one also on vinyl, but it's great to have it in CD also. Because the CD actually contains more songs than the vinyl version. Oscar Peterson again, Compact Jazz, a compilation on Mercury. We have Oscar Peterson and Roy Eldridge, piano and trumpet duo. Now, this was actually a far better album than I could imagine when I when I saw it. It was a real risk taker because I bought it because it was Oscar Peterson, but it's actually really, really great. They play very well together, and Oscar Peterson also plays organ in some tracks. So this one is highly recommended, actually. We have a Stan Getz Plays, released on Verve. We have a CD with Glenn Gray and the Casaloma Orchestra, radio transcriptions from 1935. Arthur Shaw, and an album released on Bluebird. Basie Big Band from Montreux, 1977. We have a Best of Miles Davis, the Capitol and Blue Note years. And we have a Wardell Gray, Giants of Jazz release, The Chase. And we have a couple of essential jazz master releases. This is Dizzy Gillespie with Charlie Parker, Carnegie Hall concert. That I listened to the other day on an old radio show. Here we have Jerry Mulligan, Westwood Walk. Here we have the Thelonious Monk 4-in-1. We have a Dave Brubeck, Stardust. And we have a Dave Brubeck and Paul Desmond, T42. And we have this next track here, filled with great stuff. And we start with Dizzy Gillespie and his orchestra, Chronological Classics. Monica Zetterlund again, Bill Remember, a tribute to Bill Evans. Monica Zetterlund, as I showed in the previous video, did an album with Bill Evans called Waltz for Debbie. That was her absolute favorite of her entire catalog. And this was made after Bill Evans passed away. I think this also was the final album that she ever did. Monica Zetterlund. A little further back in time, Sakta vi går genom stan, which is a Swedish version of Walking My Baby Back Home. A really great album, mixed English. No, this is only Swedish, but it's Swedish versions of different kind of jazz songs also. We have Teddy Wilson with Billie Holiday. And we have a Bix Beiderbecke on Giants of Jazz, Bixology. Jan Savitt and his orchestra. That is a pretty much unknown name today. A big band leader that hardly anyone remember, but he was really, really good actually. Released by Jasmine Records, that have been releasing a lot of with these lesser known big band leaders. Terry Gibbs Dream Band Volume 2. It's really, really great big band from the 50s. And we have another one also here, Dream Band. Here we have Miles Davis, and Out of the Blue. This is released on something called Evergreen, with different kind of bebop styles. Count Basie, live in Stockholm 1954. This Stockholm concert is released in extremely many versions. I have one on vinyl also. Frankie Trumbauer and his orchestra, with all of these great names, released on the Chronological Classics. Frankie Trumbauer normally is famous for early music, early jazz, but this is more from the big band era. The Paris All-Stars, Homage to Charlie Parker. Very interesting live concert from Paris, 1989, I mean. And with these great musicians, familiar names: Dizzy Gillespie, Max Rose, Stan Getz, Phil Woods, Milt Jackson, Hank Jones. Roy Eldridge and Coleman Hawkins live in 1959. Just You, Just Me. Next row we have Johnny Hodges and Wild Bill Davis. Saxophone and organ. Really great combo. Isham Jones, here we're talking early big band. Swinging Down the Lane. Living Era, also a label that have been releasing a whole lot of these lesser known big band leaders. Dexter Gordon Quartet on Giants of Jazz. Johnny Bothwell and his orchestra. And you might ask, who is Johnny Bothwell? Well, Johnny Bothwell was a more modern jazz musician who followed in the style of Stan Kenton and Boyd Rayburn. And this is really great. Live performances from 1946. And here comes Boyd Rayburn, one of my favorite big band leaders, and unfortunately very forgotten today. He was said to be very much too much ahead of his time in his style. Fletcher Henderson and his orchestra, 34 to 37. We have Don Redman and his orchestra, and Don Redman is normally an arranger that arranged a whole lot of classic jazz songs. And jazz recording, sorry, but isn't that famous for, when it comes to his own recordings, is most famous for early jazz, but this is a pretty late one from 1946 in a radio live recording. Don Redman here again, in more 30s style, traditional big band. Isham Jones again, in a late 20s, early 30s recordings. This is interesting. This is Ivy Benson and her all-girl band. They were female musicians, but mostly women were vocalists in different kind of big bands. But this is one of the few all-female big bands from the 30s or 40s. And we have another one example here, Ina Ray Hutton, This is not an all-female band, but this is one of the few examples where a woman led a big band. Recordings from 43 to 44. Claude Hopkins and his Cotton Club Orchestra, also a really great one. He took over more or less after Duke Ellington on Cotton Club. Recordings from 35. Bunny Burrigan and his rhythm makers. Bunny Burrigan I mentioned before. A sad jazz career, jazz life, who ended way too short due to his alcoholic problem. But he was a really great big band leader, underrated. So here comes another one. And we have Benny Bergen and his orchestra here. Live broadcast from radio. Fletcher Henderson and his orchestra live at the Grand Terrace in Chicago, 38. Fletcher Henderson and his orchestra in a Bluebird release. From his early time to his more big band oriented time. Ambrose and his orchestra. Ambrose, also a very forgotten big band leader. A British big band leader. He was actually only called Ambrose. And here comes another one. Swing is in the air. This is a double CD set. Early big band. Big band in maybe one of its earliest forms. Kenny Burrell and trio on Jazz Time. Ray Noble and his orchestra featuring Al Bowley. Here we're also talking again early big band and also British big band. Andy Kirk and his 12 Clouds of Joy, a really great big band that is also sadly forgotten today in a chronological classics. Until Your Dreams Comes True is maybe his biggest hits. Another forgotten name today, Ziggy Elman and his orchestra. Charlie Shavers. It was in the crisscross between big bebop and swing. Harry James and Music Makers in a live album, live concerts, live recordings. Don Byas. This is small band swing, 40 style in its best form. Bengt Hallberg, Swedish jazz now, all-star sessions from the 50s with Swedish amazing saxophone player Lars Gullin. Ulf Johansson Verre, the piano player, Piano Magic. And we're coming here now to the final row, Ben Pollack, another name from the past. That isn't that mentioned today. Also early form of big band. Lionel Hampton, 2 CDs, Flying Home. Also contains some Lionel Hampton in small band sessions, which isn't that usual, that ordinary. Lucky Millinder, also another one with a little early bebop style, and this is Backbeats on Topaz. Talking low budget label with great jazz that isn't seen all that much. Count Basie, Volume 2, compilation sound form. John Savitt again and his Top Hatters. This is a live recording from 1938. Jimmy Dorsey and his orchestra. I think this also is some kind of a bootleg release. Jack Jenny, also today pretty much forgotten big band leader. Stardust. This is an interesting album. Bert Lawns Biltmore Hotel Orchestra. Here we can talk about a really forgotten name. I hardly knew who he was actually. Also, I think this is more of a private release. I had never seen a CD with this name actually until I saw this one. Vocalion is also a label that is famous for releasing a whole lot of great deal of pretty much forgotten big band leaders, such as Lou Prager. It's okay, not the best album, but it has some really great moments. And British jazz, we're in a phase of right now. Jack Hilton and his orchestra. This is also early British big band, really great. Count Basie, Brand New Wagon, Forest Recordings. We have a Lionel Hampton. Small combos. Lionel Hampton again. And this Basin Street Blues. And we have the Errol Garner collection, Easy to Love. And finally, for this video, Chet Baker Stella by Starlight, a jazz hour with. And that is the end of part 2 in this series. In part 3, I will go through all of these and Past Perfect Silverline collection, and also some I haven't listened to yet. There are some of those also here, of course. So until next time, take care and so long.